Hello and good evening, everyone. Vishwas, good evening. I'm fine. Okay, so good evening, Shivani, Deepti, Vikulp, Zoom session for strategy कब होगा? अरे, sir has taken the session yesterday or not? Ashok sir has taken the session, na? And he has discussed the strategy for next 50 days, how to approach next 50 days. He already discussed yesterday, and you was there in the session. I saw you in the session. Hmm? You was part of that session. I was also there. I was watching that session. Hmm. So we was taking this part, social structure in India, right? So we have discussed few topics, and what I found that ki in your course means in the application already lot of schemes and related material is available there, right? In the course already many of the PDFs are available there. However, those PDFs are related to what? Schemes of various ministries and department, right? Of various ministries and department. And for me, I don't think any reason to discuss those schemes and again. So what you have to do, you have to go through those schemes. For example, positive discrimination in the favor of underprivileged class. So all the schemes of Ministry of Social Justice, all the schemes are being there. You can go through those schemes, right? Similarly, all schemes related to health and education are already available there. You can go through that. What I am going to do, I am going to discuss in general things related to all these topic, right? I'm going to discuss in general thing related to this topic, and when we will finish all this part and we will go for descriptive, right? When we will go for descriptive, then we will take the question and we will discuss the in the question answer format. So I am going to discuss in general part, right? In general part, schemes are already available in the course. You should go through the schemes. Fine. After discussion with me, you can go through those schemes, and after the scheme, when we will go for descriptive plus revision, then we will take the questions, right? Because it is too much, means taking too much time, and it is not required to go in such a length for your exam, right? Because your exam is mostly going to be based on particular scheme. But in order to introduce start your answer and how to finish that answer, you need some basic understanding about what, for example, social sector in India, health and education sector in India. You need some basic data or basic understanding. This is what I am going to discuss here. Okay. Good evening, Ramin, Bhavna. Yes, sir. By doing that, we can save time and use it effectively. Healthy discussion can happen. So this is what I have planned, because it is taking too much time to finish those topics. So we'll just give you the briefing to what kind of the issue you may have to see in the exam, or what kind of the questions will be there, on what topic they are going to ask the questions, right? And how to answer. So that will be more important. All the schemes and related thing data is already available. So I'm not going to push too much time on the compiling the data, because I have seen that the data is already available. A lot of data is already available there. So no need for me to do the same, means overlapping work again and again. Okay. even it is unevenly distributed. Okay, even if it is unevenly distributed, you can expect around 20 to 25 marks. Okay, you can expect 20 to 25 marks from there. Yes, so schemes related thing you are already going to cover it, right? You are already going to cover it. So I don't feel that it is necessary to discuss, open those PDFs and discuss line by line. It is absolutely not necessary, because there is nothing like any conceptual kind of the thing is there which you are not able to understand while reading, right? So I want to put that session, the live session, in more qualitative way rather than in the quantitative way, right? Though I can easily take means every topic I can take the discussions, it can be length of 1 hour or 2 hours sessions I can take, but actually this is not a requirement of your exam, because if you will compare, these topics are already in the UPSC exam also, right? And there they ask the question in depth, right? Their questions are having more depth. So at that level we need to discuss in depth, right? But in your exam, the exam is more or less that is going to be focused based on particular scheme, right? Particular scheme of the government of India. And even if there is a general question, I'm going to let you know how to answer those general questions. So apart from that, there is no need to go and discuss all the things in detail, especially the scheme part. Fine. So this urbanization and migration, right? So we was taking the urbanization and migration part, and I have shared that PDF. Have you gone through those PDF? Have you seen those PDF? Multiculturalism and urbanization. Okay, okay, okay. Globalization and poverty. Okay, why you are following IGNU books? IGNU books are absolutely not required for Grade B exam. IGNU books are even heavier for the, if you have an optional of political science, right? So these topics you will find in the political science optional. These topics are also in GS, UPSC. In UPSC GS, these topics are there. In UPSC PSI are optional, political science and international optional. All these topics are there, right? So if you are preparing for those exams, then you can refer to IGNU books. Otherwise, IGNU books are absolutely not required even for UPSC General Studies exam. They are absolutely not required. And who told you to go for those books? Why you want to unnecessarily put pressure on yourself by doing this Herculean approach, right? Hardly there will be 20 to 25 marks question will be from those topics, and you are reading the Malthusian approach, another approach. Absolutely not required. Not required. Don't waste your time unnecessarily, right? Absolutely not required. Forget about important. You should not go through those. Not required. They are not going to ask the theories of what urbanization and migration. They are not going to ask the theories, Malthusian theory. I also have those PDF. Wait a minute. Just give me a second. So you can see this they there is a paper, right? There is a paper, and they have given the paper on evaluating of India's quota system, right? India's quota system and affirmative action. So this is the paper where they have mentioned a lot of names and theories. Jaffarlet's name, Subramaniam's name, lot of names are being there, but it is absolutely not required for your exam, because they are not going to ask such kind of the question where you have to put the theories and something like that. So absolutely not required. So please share the most important questions that could be asked. Yes, sure. Lectures are only in the English, not in Hindi. Okay, so social structure, I have already shared the PDF of urbanization and multiculturalism. One topic we have to understand today, that is migration. And apart from migration, what are the other issues? I will brief you today, right? And then if something is required, I will share the PDF. If, for example, I have shared the PDF of multiculturalism and urbanization. Similarly, if any PDF or something is which is required related to theoretical understanding, not theory, but theoretical understanding, right? Theory is given by a certain person. Theoretical construct means that ki whosoever is given that theory, that is not important. What they say, that is important, and we will compile it as I compiled last few materials. So similarly, I will extract those theories of different people without naming them. I will compile it and I will share with you. So what is my plan for rest of these topic is what? My plan is to give you basic understanding, right? To give you basic understanding, and if required, I will share certain PDF related to theory part, right? What you have to do, go with the basic understanding, read those theoretical part of PDF, then go to PDF on schemes, which is already available there. So this is more than sufficient for doing this entire part. Beyond that, it's absolutely not required to do anything. Nothing is required. Okay. For learning purpose, nothing is required. Don't go for such kind of the theoretical construct and theories and all. They are abundant in the nature, but they are not absolutely required for your exam. Okay. So have you gone through with the multiculturalism PDF which I have shared? What is multiculturalism? What is multiculturalism? What is multiculturalism? Anyone? Multiculturalism, though I already explained you, still you are not able to answer. acceptance of others' culture without harming sentiment. Okay, right. So multiculturalism is what related to the term known as tolerance. Tolerance means what? Accepting the other different culture or different way of life with the majority. So if you are in the majority and you are accepting the minority culture and their religious triad and you are happily living with them, then we called it as a multiculturalism approach. Just read that PDF. Just read that PDF. That is more than sufficient. Apart from that, nothing is required. Okay. So please go through that PDF, and if you have any doubt, please let me know. Fine. So I'm not going to discuss, because if you are not going to read those things, then there is no point to discuss here. Fine. Accepting the cultures and ethnicity of various groups, right? Coexistence of multiple culture, right? So just go through that PDF. That is more than sufficient. Fine. Now, one more thing we have to discuss, that is migration, right? Migration. Whenever the topic of urbanization is there, the related topic is what? Related topic is migration. So migration means shifting of people or group of people from one place to another place. In the literal sense, we called it as a migration. Movement of people from one place to another place, we will call it as a migration. In the context of urbanization or the poverty and unemployment, migration is seen as movement right. So sometimes rural to urban, right? And that is most talked migration. Migration from rural to urban. But other kind of the migrations are also there. For example, urban to urban. Sometimes urban to rural also. So urban to urban, urban to rural, and rural to urban, right? It means there are the very few instances when we will found rural to rural, right? Especially in the Indian context, because the situation of rural India is more or less identical in every part of the world. So there is very less kind of the instances where we have seen rural to rural migration. Most of the migration what we have seen in our country, that is on top, is rural to urban or urban to urban. Urban to urban means generally we defined our urban areas, what we have discussed in the last class when we were discussing about urbanization. Metropolitan, then tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3, and tier 4 cities, right? Tier 4 cities. So from all these cities, right, to metropolitan, or from tier 4 cities to tier 1 cities, again tier 3 cities to tier 2 cities. So such kind of the migration we have seen, right? So for example, Lucknow, there is a migration from Lucknow to Delhi, right? At the same time, there is a migration from Sultanpur to Lucknow. Sitapur, they are districts in the Uttar Pradesh. There is a migration from all these nearby districts to Lucknow, right? So Lucknow is getting the migration from nearby area, whereas we have seen the migration from Lucknow to big cities like Delhi also, right? So in that way, migrations will happen in India. During the COVID time, this migration was a big issue, right? Because people want to move from one place to another place and they have faced a lot of difficulty. First of all, they was forced to migrate, right? They were forced to migrate. Second thing, For the migration, they have faced a lot of issues. People started walk from one place to another place, and distance they have covered more than 1,000 kilometers, 2,000 kilometers distance they have covered on foot, right? And that shows the horrible picture of migration in India. Ki how migration is a big problem. Generally, we do not see the migration visually, but during the COVID times, we have seen that ki migration in India at what level? Because all the poor laborers who are who were migrated from their villages or tier 4 cities to the big centers like Delhi or Mumbai or Bangalore, they want to move back to their hometown because of the lockdown they are not able to sustain themselves in those cities, and they want to go back to their villages so that at least they can get some food, right? They can get some food because the situation because of the lockdown is something like that. It is the question for their survival. So that lockdown has shown the horrible side of migration in India. Government has stepped in, even Supreme Court has given the direction, right? So since then the migration issue was a hot discussed topic issue in Indian politics, right? So if you'll see the migration, right? Migration is going to what? Migration is going to increase urbanization. If migration is from where? Rural to urban area, there is a migration, then definitely there will be more urbanization, right? There will be more urbanization. So that migration shows the positive side of the migration, right? But once you migrated to the urban area, are you able are you able to get all basic facilities? Are you able to get all basic facilities, right? So this is the big question, right? And here we have to work. Government have to go for certain schemes or measures, so that if the migration will be there, right? If the migration will be there, those people who are migrating from one place to another place, they must get some minimum basic facilities when they are migrating, right? So one scheme like one nation, one ration card. One nation, one ration card. So this is an impact of what the horrible situation we have seen in the COVID times, COVID related lockdown times. After that, government take this kind of the action. We are going to implement what? One nation, one ration card. It doesn't matter your ration card is of what place, wherever you are able to get ration from public distribution shops through this one nation one ration card. So such kind of the things government have to take necessary steps in order to resolve those issues. So migration have a positive impact on the urbanization. But if urbanization is not being done in the proper manner, right? Proper policies were not implemented, then all the problems which we see, all the problems which we see in the urbanization, right? Whatever the problems we can see in the urbanization, the same problems are related to migration also. Means what? For example, if we say that unregulated or not properly planned or urbanization will create what? Will increase criminal activities in the urban areas, right? So similarly, the same thing we can say in the case of migration also. If the migration is happening from one place and another place, and no proper database is being maintained, no proper facilities is being provided for the migrated people, then the crime against them and crimes by them, both possibilities is supposed to increase. And especially when you are a migrated person to particular place, it's a big difficulty for you to go for law enforcement agencies. If you faced any crime like situation, it's going to be a little bit difficult for you, because you are not a local person, so you have to face a lot of difficulty in order to go for grievances redressal, right? So these are certain problems related to migration. Fine, and government must have to come with certain kind of the solutions so that they can resolve those issues. But the bottom line is what? Bottom line is what problems we have seen in what? Urbanization. Same set of problems are related to with what? Migration. That means the solution we do suggest for urbanization, the same problem part, solution part. So what problems we have seen in the urbanization, the same problem we have seen in the migration. So the solution which we have suggested for the urbanization, the same set of solution we can suggest for migration also. So this is what you have to tactically deal these topic, right? You must know what is urbanization and what is migration. But at the bottom line, you will find that the same kind of the problem we have seen in the case of urbanization and in the case of migration, right? So similar kind of the schemes you can mention there in order to suggest certain solution key. This way we can resolve the migration issue, right? One more thing regarding the migration, sometimes the migration from rural to urban is of unskilled people from moving from rural to urban. In certain cases, what we can do in that cases where the unskilled people or semi-skilled people are moving from where? Rural to urban area in the search of employment. So government have to focus on rural employment generation schemes. So whatever the schemes of government of India for the rural employment generation, you can mention there in order to resolve the issue of migration in the rural area. But the migration for the purpose of what? The migration for the purpose of higher education, that is going to be there. You cannot stop it because it's very difficult to establish a quality institution at every place, right? So the quality institutions like IITs, IIMs, right, or Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, these kind of the institution for government, it is not possible to establish that kind of the institution at every district. It is not technically possible. So in the case of higher education, there will be the migration, right? For skilled related job, there will be the migration, right? There will be the migration. Suppose that there is a boy or girl who is from a rural area. So that boy or girl went for higher education in IIT, and after completing his graduation from IIT, BTech or other stream, they have completed their graduation from IIT. For the placement, they are moving to Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune, or some like cities, tech cities. So that migration is but obvious. So generally, we do not have the problem with that migration. That migration is going to strengthen the urbanization. The migration which create a lot of problem for urban centers and the people who are migrating those urban centers, especially for unskilled laborers. So when unskilled laborers move from their rural area to urban area in the search of employment, because their unawareness, because of their no education or little bit literacy, they are prone to be exploited, right? And they are targeted section by the criminals also, right? And because of unregulated or without the proper way of their migration, they are also going to create a lot of problem in the urban centers also. Means people are not problematic. What I mean to say is that their unorganized or proper planned migration is going to unnecessarily create a stress on the urban resources, right? So their movement is always welcome. It's not like that they are not welcome to the urban centers. They are welcome to the urban centers, but their migration must be properly executed by the local government and the city administration. That is why the role of local bodies is very important in the case of what? In the case of urbanization and urbanization through migration. Okay. So in COVID, reverse migration happened. Many returned to native place. Abhishek, where I can get the PDF of initially live classes. Abhishek, nowhere. I have not provided that PDF. I read somewhere it is suggested that this way the second largest mass migration in India after the partition. Yes, this was the largest mass migration after the partition because everybody was looking that thing, right? Every day, every day there is a mass migration from one place to another place. It's like if you will see the data of the railways, right? If you will see the data of railways, that is mass migration. During the time of festival, there is a mass migration. But generally, you are not able to see because you are busy in other part of your life. At the time of COVID, everyone was locked down. Certain people are having a freedom, like people who are from media, they are having the freedom to report those things. Just I was in Delhi and I have seen the rush at railway station and bus stops at the time of festival when Deepavali and some other festivals were there. Just go there and see the migration. Then you are able to see what kind of the migration during the festival time will happen. Right. Many times there is a stampede on New Delhi railway station. Stampede, right? And after that stampede, railway administration has taken the certain measures to stop that stampede. So it's not like that that was the only mass migration happened at every year. At the time of festival, people who are living at the different urban centers, they migrate to their native place and they will come back. You can say that sir, that is not migration, that people will go there. So similarly, what people are saying, that was a reverse migration. It was not a reverse migration. People who are working on the daily basis, daily wages, right? The daily wagers who are living in the urban centers, for example, the vegetable seller, right? Or the street hawker. The street hawker, the vegetable sellers, all these people, they are daily wage workers, right? They will earn on the daily basis in order to fulfill their food requirements, right? So at the time of COVID, when the lockdown was there, they were forced to stay back where they are, and they find that it is not possible for them to sustain. So for that COVID time, they moved to their native place. But again, when the situation is getting normal, they again migrated back to their original place where they have settled after migration. So that reverse migration was just a time being phenomena during the COVID times, right? It was not a permanent kind of the reverse migration. You cannot typically call it as a reverse migration. Reverse migration is going to happen when people like you who are here or in the cities, and after completing your education or whatever you are doing, you go back to your native place, and from that native place you are trying to run your business. So that is the kind of the migration. So when we say migration, it is a kind of what? Settlement. Not temporary but permanent kind of the settlement. You are going to be settled there permanently. So when people will move from urban centers to their rural center during the COVID time, so it was narrated as what? Migration. Actually, it was not a proper migration. When we discuss the migration, it means that the people are going to stay there for remain part of their life, right? So I am settled here right now. I migrated to Hyderabad. I migrated to Hyderabad from Delhi, right? 3 years back, I migrated here. So I migrated here. So my migration is permanent as of right now. But it's not like that ki I'm going to stay. But I can say that ki I migrated here. I migrated here. So, for example, during the COVID times, what happened? I was not feeling well. So parents is saying that ki, come back here. So when you are going to be well, you can go back to there. But for time being, you can come here. Later on, you can go back to Hyderabad. But as of right now, you can come to Kanpur or nearby place. So we cannot call it as a migration. My movement from Delhi to Hyderabad, for since last 3 years I am here. So I migrated. I can say that migrated. If I will go to my native place, Kanpur, right, and I'll stay there for 1 month or 1.5 months or even 2 months to make myself healthy again, so I cannot call it as a migration because I'm temporarily going there. So similarly, what it terms at a reverse migration during the COVID times, it was not actually a proper reverse migration. But the migrants who migrated, for example, from Bengaluru, right? People who who went to Bengaluru from Samastipur in Bihar, or from Samastipur they went to Delhi, right? And during COVID times they returned back to where? Samastipur. So what media is terming is a reverse migration. Media is terming is a reverse migration because people from Samastipur went to where? Delhi. That is migration. And during the COVID times, people who are returning, right? Who are returning back to Samastipur, it was called as what? Reverse migration. Actually, that was not reverse migration. For temporarily, people are moving to Samastipur so that they can survive. Because under the lockdown kind of the situation, you are not able to survive. But once you will get an opportunity, things are going to be normal. These people are going back to where? Delhi or Bengaluru, right? So that reverse migration is not a right term, but that kind of the terminology, if it is being used, it is going to impact those who are reading those news, those who are listening those news, those who are watching those news. That is going to hit very hard sentiments of those people. So that's why that narrative was created, that is reverse migration. Migration means reverse migration. We can say the reverse migration when the people who are in Delhi, they came back permanently to where? Samastipur. Then we will call it as what? Then we will call it as a reverse migration. If Kashmiri Pandits, they are going back to the Kashmir, then we will call it as a what? Reverse migration, right? Any religious people, because of any adversities, they have moved out from that place, right? And again they are going to settle back there. Then we will call it as a reverse migration. So reverse migration is not always a bad thing. Reverse migration sometimes also show a good signature also. But you have to be very careful while terming what is migration, what is reverse migration. Okay. Good evening, Vrishali. So I hope you got the understanding of what? You got the understanding of what is migration, right? So all schemes related to migration in the recent time started by the government of India, and some basic theoretical part of migration I will share with you. You can read that. But I have given you the perspective of what is migration, right? And few schemes which is related to the migration I will share you. Details you can find in the crack grade B course, but some means some basic name of those schemes I will mention in the PDF which I am going to share. Any doubt here? Any doubt here regarding migration or related understanding? Any doubt? Okay. Now, move to another topic. There are few terms like reservation, positive discrimination, and affirmative action. Right. In India, this term is most popular, whereas in US the affirmative action is more popular, right? In US the main issue regarding the affirmative action is the ethnic in the nature. Ethnic in the nature means in country like US there are the black people, there are the white people, right? So that is more or less based on what? Ethnicity and the race. Whereas in country like India, that reservation or positive discrimination basically based on what? Caste and religion, right? Minorities, caste people, especially there are certain castes who are being historically exploited, right? So at the time of independence in 1947, we have the great responsibility to uplift all the people, right? Uplift all the people. So there are the certain section of our Indian society who are historically what? Who are being historically, uh, they are in the backside. They are very backward. They do not have a proper access to all the social systems. So it was a responsibility of government to take necessary steps in order to put those people in the mainstream, right? So in order to push them in the mainstream, right? So at the time of independence there are some societies, they are at this level of what? They are at this level of social, or better, so it is what? It is a minimum level of socio-economic facilities at the time of independence 1947. So there are the certain kind of the communities who are already have this facility, means they are at the minimum level. Already they are at minimum level, not maximum level, they already are at minimum level. However, there are certain section of the societies still they are far away. Still they are far away from what? Still they are far away from the minimum level because of their historical exploitation, or they are neglected historically. So that's why they are far away from what? The minimum level of availability of socio-economic things. Like they are not being allowed to enter in the temple, they are not being allowed to be the part of any social gathering, they are not being allowed to work in the mainstream. Certain kind of the discriminations were there. So in order to what? In order to remove certain kind of the discrimination, uh, means kind of what we can say is discrimination, right? The discrimination against such kind of the communities, government must have to step in, right? Not only government of India, but in general government at national level, state level, as well as local level must have to step in order to push those people to reach at least here, right? And create a kind of society where all of them have what? All of them have access, equal access to minimum basic socio-economic facilities available in our system. So in order to push them, we have to give certain additional facilities to them, additional opportunities to them in order to push them to reach here, right? And what the policy actions were taken by the government in such cases, right? To give them priority, right? Generally, there should be the fair competition, means everyone should be treated equally. But we know that we cannot treat everyone equally because there are certain sections of the society, they are historically what? They are historically pushed backward, right? So we cannot have a fair competition because certain section is already very backward because of the historical nature of your society. So in order to be a fair competitive structure of your society, we need to push them. We have to provide certain additional facilities so they can come in the mainstream, and we can create an egalitarian society. The term is egalitarian. Egalitarian society means where everyone have an equal opportunity to access all basic facilities of your society, right? So for that, government went for what? For that, government went for certain policy decisions, and under that social certain policy decisions, government has decided to reserve government has decided to reserve seats for those communities, not only in jobs, plus educational institutions, right? So in this way we want to push them, and to push them so that they can come in the mainstream. So this was the objective taken by government of India in 1947, and it is properly reflected in our constitution also. Over the time, some other communities which were not being included in 1950s constitution, for example, in the 1950s constitution, SC, ST, and some religious minorities were given certain special status regarding education and the government job, but other backward classes were not included. And when the Janata government came into the power in 1975, they have established Mandal Commission, known in the name of BP Mandal. Right, BP Mandal was a this OBC leader from Bihar, and under his leadership, BP Mandal Commission was established in order to inquire the other backward classes, do they need to be mainstreamed or not, right? Do they be put in the mainstream or not? So Mandal Commission has suggested that yes, they need certain reservations, not only in the education institutions but also for the government jobs. However, Janata government fall down and the commission's report were never accepted. However, when VP Singh become prime minister, he accepted the recommendation of what? He accepted the recommendation of Mandal Commission, and OBC reservation was implemented. After that, there was a lot of court related and public agitation, counter agitations were there. So court came up with what? Ki all OBCs are need not to be accepted here, right? All OBCs, there are certain OBCs who are already here or above this list, above this line. So all OBCs are need not to be considered below this line, the minimum socio-economic facilities line, right? So court came up with what? Creamy layer theory, right? So while giving the creamy layer theory, till then, creamy layer theory, only social basis was consideration in India. Though I have mentioned here socio-economic facilities, but while giving the reservation in the original constitution of 1950, only social conditions were taken in the consideration. But when the OBC reservation came into the picture, Supreme Court in his decision of Indra Sawhney case, they came up with what? The concept of creamy layer. Creamy layer means what? They are already privileged class, so they do not need any kind of the reservation facility either in the government job or in the educational institution, right? And that decision of considering the economic status as a basis of reservation, right? So after the creamy layer, or this case for SC ST reservation, only social condition, only social conditions were there. For OBC, social plus economic conditions are going to be considered. By including the economic condition means economic condition that is minus creamy layer, right? So the exclusion of creamy layer on the basis of their income status, that has opened another view on what? Affirmative action, reservation. Now there are people who are in the general category. They are in the general category, but they have low economic status. They have low economic status. So because of their low economic status, they are not able to attain all socio-economic facilities, right? So that's why government came with what? Government came with of EWS quota. Government came up with EWS quota, means only social status is not only thing to provide the affirmative action kind of the thing, socio plus economic, both. So as of right now, OBC plus general category, OBC plus general category, for them reservation have both socio-economic basis, whereas for SC and ST, only socio things are being considered. However, in the recent times, various studies have shown that even these SC and ST groups, in these SC and ST group, so suppose that SC group is comprised of how much? SC group is comprised of 100 caste and ST group is comprised of 70 caste, right? There are 70 different castes are included in ST group, and there are 100 kind of the castes they are included in the SC group. So over the year, when researchers have studied these 100 castes, these 70 castes, what they found that out of this 100, there are only certain castes are able to what? Able to effectively utilize the benefits of the reservation, and they already achieve good socio-economic status. Whereas right now, when we reserve the seats for SC, we reserve the seats for the ST, that seats are going to be only those already to those castes who already achieve their socio-economic status, right? So this is why slowly but gradually researchers are putting their data and they are pushing this factor even for SC and ST. We have to consider this thing. So those castes who already achieve that level, means they are IS, their parents were what? Their parents, the greatest example of Tina Dabi, right? The greatest example is Tina Dabi. She is already what? Her family is very influential family. Both parents are in influential government officials, right? So she got the privilege of what? Reservation, right? So she's not coming from the underprivileged class. So I'm not saying, or we are not saying ki all the people of that caste must be put out of the reservation. The point is ki those people of that caste who already came to the mainstream, they should not get the benefit of the reservation. So the other people of that community or that caste, they get the benefit of the reservation. You know that if she was not in that category, even she was not able to clear the prelims, her cutoff was even low to the general category cutoff. If she has applied from the general category, she is not able to clear the prelims exam. And that was a viral kind of the post at that point of time when she topped the civil services. On Facebook, that was a very viral, right? Her marks in the prelims and her marks in the prelims, it was compared with the general category candidate. And there was, see, people are not against her. People are against such kind of the people who already enjoyed the reservation benefits, right? So you have already enjoyed the benefit, so you should be put in the mainstream. And those people who are still struggling, they need more support, they need more kind of the policy support by the government, so that they can also come into the mainstream. This is the main objective of providing the reservation, right? So somebody got an EWS quota, so he or she should not consider that quota is permanent for me, right? For me and for my siblings and for another siblings. It should not be like that we have got a title. See, in India, so it right now reservation is considered as a title, and I'm the holder of that title, so that I can enjoy that benefits, right? So that was not a vision of Ambedkar Sahab, right? And today is the great day, Ambedkar Jayanti is there, so Ambedkar vision was not there. Ambedkar always want to create a what? An egalitarian society. He always want to create an egalitarian society, and Baba Sahab is one of the finest politician, finest economist. His name people generally know in the parlance of constitution, law, and politics. But you know that he wrote a book on Indian currency, right? His book name was On Indian Currency, and that was a brilliant study of Indian currency during the 1920s, much appreciated by even John Maynard Keynes. So he was an extraordinary gentleman. He want to create this kind of the society what I am discussing. See, everybody should get an opportunity to come in the mainstream. Not particular people are going to hold this thing. So scholars are giving their studies, and on the basis of that studies, they also want to implement that thing. But to implement that thing, we need to go for what? A fair economic census. Without a good economic census, we cannot find it out who deserve and who do not deserve, right? So sometimes people feel that when I will go for such a discussion, people feel that I am anti-reservation. Reservation must be there, but the benefit of the reservation should go to those people for whom the reservation policy was implemented. From 1950, when we have implemented our constitution, we are heading towards our 75th republic, right? 75th year of the republic. Even after 75 years, we can visibly see the social discrimination against people from that community. Even after 75 years of republic, right? We are heading towards the 75th year still. So this is why we have to make this policy more effective, right? It should not be like that we are having the policy. Now our focus should be on what? Our focus should be on to make that policy more effective in the nature, rather than just the passive way, just provide the reservation and leave, right? So we have given the reservation, now they can automatically going to come through the ladder, right? So we have put the ladder, but we are very passive in that approach. We have to be more active in that approach, and by putting the dynamism of the socio-economic census and creating certain indicators, so that people can be considered as what? They are uplifted. Fine. Yes, Ambedkar want to burn the constitution. He made the statement in the parliament. He made this statement in the parliament that I will be the first person who is going to burn that constitution. Why? Because he feel betrayed. What he want actually, that was not being implemented in the constitution. He want a kind of federal society. Federal society was not being implemented. He want to give the equal right to women's from any caste or any religion. That was not implemented. He want to create a fraternity as a fundamental right. That was not being created. So that's why he said that I will be the first person who want to burn this constitution. So don't just go and judge the person by the statement. Just go back and read why he have made the statement. In the parliamentary debate, you can find why he made that statement. And when you will read that statement, you will find that he was actually right. He was actually right. This is why after even 75 years of the reservation policy, are you able to solve that problem? No. So this is why he said that in the parliament, कि I will be the first person who want to burn this constitution, right? Because he said that कि what fundamental rights you are giving, the fundamental rights to whom? To the people of India. But that fundamental right is not so important. The social rights are very important. So you have to make rights in such a manner each and everyone can access. Every day your fundamental rights is getting violated. How many of the people are able to reach the Supreme Court and High Court? You need a fine lawyer. Without them you are not able to justify your rights, right? So Ambedkar don't want such kind of lawyers paradise of the constitution, right? He want a kind of constitution which can help even the common people, right? So these are the reasons. So this is the fundamental of the reservation. So whenever such kind of the question will come in mains examination, means tier 2 examination, you have to write an answer. Absolutely no need to go against the reservation, right? Reservation policy need certain changes, but in no case it should be abolished. In no case it should be abolished. It need proper implementation, and government which is responsible to implement various schemes for the upliftment of other backward classes, SC and ST, government have to effectively use those schemes in order to socially and economically uplift those people. So this is what your theme of the answer, or your theme of a verbal question which is asked, going to be asked in the interview. So sometimes they will ask outrightly, do you favor the reservation policy or not? So you outrightly you have to say, yes sir, I do favor the reservation policy. Then they are definitely going to ask, and your answer should be like that, what I have discussed with you here in this session, right? So reservation policy itself is not bad. Reservation policy is good, but its implementation is poor. So we have to implement it in the more effective manner. So this is the crux of your answer, whether it is a question in the interview, or if the question is going to be asked in what? In the written examination, where you have to write on it. Fine? Clear? After this discussion, what you have to do, you have to just go to your PDF where they have mentioned the various schemes related to upliftment of those unprivileged classes like SC, ST, OBC, and religious minorities. See, I do agree with your emotions, but I will strongly recommend you. There is no need to give your personal opinion. Even I have restrained myself. Whatever I have discussed with you, right? I have discussed whatever the things I have discussed. These are based on what? These are based on research and studies. I can mention the name if you want. You can go and read those studies. When I told you, 100 caste and only few, I know the name. I know the name and I have a data, and I can prove that data. Means not my data, that data is presented by the researchers, right? For all communities. Still I have a data in my system, right? But I thought that it is absolutely not required, right? Because it unnecessarily is going to hurt the sentiment. And here we are here to know rather than discuss and give the opinion, right? So I'm humbly requesting you, whatever is your personal view or thought, it is absolutely not required to be put in this session. I also have restrained myself, right? I have not mentioned any single name or any single kind of the caste, but in general, I discussed, right? So, personal views and personal sentiment in any kind of what? Sensitive issue. So, see, this is how we can show our maturity as a human being. We know that there are certain names, certain groups, but whenever we are going to discuss any sensitive matter related to caste, religion, or anything, always try to restrain yourself to give your personal opinion. Never give it. Never give it, whether you are writing an answer, whether you are in debate or discussion, whether you are interview. Restrain yourself. That is going to show your maturity as a human and your knowledge and depth knowledge about that issue. Being a sentimental is little bit easier. Restraining the sentiments or holding the sentiments is very difficult. Right? So this is why I'm humbly requesting you restrain yourself. See, I mentioned the name of Tina Dabi, right? I mentioned the name of Tina Dabi, and why I have mentioned, because there was a proper studies in the newspaper and various literature they have mentioned. So that's why I have given the example. People have given the example. That's why I have given the example. Apart from that, I have lot of data. I have lot of things, but I don't want to create unnecessary nonsense in the session. Right. Tina Dabi was an example and it was properly quoted in the many leading newspaper. Right. So that's why I also have discussed. So it's not like that key that was a slip of tongue. That was properly constructed view. Okay. समझे बेटा विश्वास? Right. So I'm always very aware of ki when I'm going to discuss these topics, I'm very aware ki what I'm not supposed to say this thing. I'm very clear. Don't worry. Any doubt in this issue, or which you want to discuss with me, or you have any doubt in your mind related to this issue? Any doubt or question? Okay. So I have discussed this one: multiculturalism, urbanization and migration, positive discrimination in the favor of underprivileged, social movement. I already discussed. I already told you about the political system, social sector in India, health and education, and human development, right? And gender related socio issues. So when we say this topic, gender related issues, right? So for this, even there is no need to go for discussion on this thing. Gender related issues, women, child, and LGBT section, right? Right. Lesbian, gay, and other genders related things are a big issue in India, and for that we have to go for what? Scheme sections. Scheme section. Go to the scheme section of your notes. There is no need to go for having any discussion on this thing. Just read those schemes. In the part 1 and part 2, they are going to ask only on the schemes, right? So absolutely not required to have any discussion. Though in general, this issue is Important, not for your exam, but anyone who is also appearing for the civil services exam, they must go through in the details, right? But for your exam, they are going to focus only on the schemes. Fine. But still, if you need some literature, I will share some PDF, right? I'm not going to discuss, but I will share some PDF apart from those schemes, right? And again, when we are going to discuss questions on it, I will provide certain feeds also. Okay. Now, related to human development, social sector in India, health and education. Again, this section, health and education. You have to go for what? Schemes, schemes, and schemes. That's it. Human development and social sector in India, that can be discussed, and I'm going to discuss here. But for this topic, health and education, gender related social issues, please refer to the schemes. If you are going to have any doubt in your mind, ask me, I will clarify that doubt. Okay, fine. Now let's move to human development. What is human development? Anyone want to answer what is human development? What is human development? Human development means human development report, right? What is human development? Health, living, education, security, living standard, growth. What is this? Health, living, education, security, living standard, growth. This is human development. Is this is a human development? Hmm? Sir, human development can be defined as overall improvement in human beings' life than just an economic certain things. Okay. Improvement in the living lifestyle and growth as well. Okay. Growth of all these sectors. Acha. Okay. Growth of all these sectors. Anyone else who want to express their views regarding human development? And let the person decide with freedom what to do, how to do, and how to live. This is more about human rights. Vimal, what you have just mentioned, that is more about human rights. Freedom to do, how. Vimal, what do you mean by how to live? I am not getting what you have mentioned. That's absolutely fine. What to do, how to do, but and how to live. What you want to say from this? How to live? If you are saying this thing, how to live in the context of multiculturalism, right? Then it's fine. Then it's fine. But again, the multiculturalism and how to live, what to do, that are more or less they are associated with the human rights rather than human development, right? Human rights and human development, though the core objective of human rights and human development is to achieve the same goal, right? But human rights are more socio-political in nature, whereas when we talk about human development, then we consider the economic aspect in more economic aspect in more inclusive manner. This is what we are heading towards, what? Human development. We can achieve the human development only when growth and development is more inclusive in nature rather than exclusive, right? So, for example, one of the great economists of our time, Simon Kuznets, he has given the idea of Kuznets curve. And even today, from Kuznets curve, the derivative of Kuznets curve, that is environmental Kuznets curve, is also being discussed in terms of what? Climate change. So Simon Kuznets, born in Russia, migrated to US, right? And he was one of the chief architect for GDP and related calculations. So he was a prominent person who emphasized that country should focus on their GDP. Countries should focus on their GDP and their proper calculation. So the methodology, how to calculate the GDP, what is GDP, how to calculate in the better manner, and countries must emphasize on GDP if they want to reach what? If they want to reach inclusive growth, if they want to reach inclusive growth and they want to remove poverty and hunger. So for that he has suggested go for focus on GDP, that is gross domestic product, right? And in order to uh, present his viewpoint, or in order to emphasize his viewpoint, he has given the Kuznets curve, right? Under the Kuznets curve, what he said that So he said that when economic growth is going to increase, when the economic growth initially is going to increase, that means GDP. When GDP initially going to increase, then the curve is going to be like this. Means initially when the growth will be going to increase, initially economic inequality will also increases. Growth will increases, economic inequality also increases. However, after certain point of time, when country is going to achieve, means for government, what he's suggesting, he is saying that initially when GDP is going to increase, your economic growth is going to increase. The economic inequality means what? Difference between rich and poor is also going to increase. But after a certain point of time, it will start decreasing. It will start decreasing. So he was suggesting this. After a certain point of time, you can see this. So this is what we called in economics, what we called it as a Kuznets कर्व. एक तो अपनी आर्ट वैसे ही मजनू भाई वाली है और ऊपर से राइटिंग ऑन दिस राइटिंग पैड. Okay, Kuznets curve. So what Kuznets want to explain with this curve, he said that initially when government is going to focus on GDP, that means government is going to focus on production. Effectively, government is going to focus on what? Industries and services sector. So initially government is going to create more facilities, more positive environment for industrialists in the country, right? So when government is going to focus on industries and services sector more, then what will happen? Then the more resources are going for them. For whom? The industrialist or the rich people. More resources are going to be diverted to them initially. However, when these resources are diverted to them and they are going to increase their production activity, then employment, income, consumption will rise, and by that rise in the employment, income and consumption, government taxation is also going to rise. So the revenue receipts of government is also going to rise over the time. And when the revenue receipts are going to rise of the government, then government not just focusing on GDP, government can also focus on what? Government can also focus on factors like health, education, and other social sectors. Right? Because to spend the money on the social sector like health, education and other social services like providing the social security, providing the food grains, for all this government need resources, right? And we cannot just rely on what? Borrowings. Because if we'll start borrowing for such kind of the causes, then every time we are going to put debt and interest payment on our head. But initially when government is going to borrow the money in order to support rise in the production, right? Production will rise. Government is going to receive more income in terms of what? Revenue receipts that they are taxes. With that rise in the taxes, government is not just able to repay the debt and interest, but government can also go for more spending on health, education, and other social sector. And when government will start spending on more health and education sector, then gradually over the time, this economic inequality between rich and poor is going to what? Decrease. So actually, what was the main objective of Simon Kuznets? Simon Kuznets was more concerned with this economic inequality. So, in order to address that economic inequality, he has suggested first focus on GDP, increase the GDP, and once you are going to sustain a good economic growth, then you can completely focus on what? Your social spending and development of human in your country. Human development kind of the thing you can emphasize. But actually what happened, what Kuznets has suggested, only half of the part was taken very seriously by the government in 1950s, 60s and 70s. So from 1940s onwards, when he has given this theory, US and most of the European countries have implemented those things. So US and European countries, they have the level of industrial revolution, and they are already able to achieve a minimum basic requirements for their society. So for them, GDP methodology is good to increase what? A better, good quality standard life, right? Because they are already reach to certain minimum level. Western societies, the developed countries, they already has achieved some basic minimum requirement. So for them, GDP is what? GDP and this Kuznets theory is not very important, right? And even the theory is not going to work, there will be no issue. But when country like India or the developing countries has adopted more and more focus on what? GDP. Then what happened? What Kuznets is suggesting this. But people like Amartya Sen in 1970s, Mahmoodul Haq from Pakistan, Amartya Sen from India, they studied theory of Kuznets with respect to developing and underdeveloped countries. And then they suggested that what Kuznets was saying, that was true till then here. But curve is not going to bend. This curve is going to like this only. And in some cases, it is going to like this. So curve is not bending, right? Kuznets suggested that what will happen? Kuznets suggested that that curve is going to what? That curve is going to bend after a certain point of time. He is suggesting it is going to what? What? As per Kuznets, is going to be like this. It's going to be like this, right? But what Amartya Sen and other economists, they show that this Kuznets curve is actually either going in this manner, and that is getting flat rather than getting bent. So it is not bending, but it is getting what? It is getting flat. And certain kind of the economic equality is still persisting in the societies. Either they are rising or they are getting what? Flat. There are the rare instances it is getting to steep dive. Steep dive is not there, like what he suggested, the steep dive. So steep dive is not there. Either it is moving forward or it is getting flat, or if it is bent. So it is bent slightly. In certain cases, it was bending. In certain cases, certain societies, it is bending. But that bend is not prominent. Like it's bending here, rising, started bending. But this bend is not further decreasing. It is like this. It is like this. So bend is being there. So when we saw this bend here, this steep dive is not there. As per Kuznets, it should be like that. So this is not happening. So Sain and Mehbubul Haq, they said that you cannot rely only on the Kuznets. Government from its initial days must allocate certain amount of money for social human development. And when you are going to do this, what government is going? Government is trying to push the GDP, right? Rather than pushing the GDP, Rather than pushing the GDP, government must focus on what? Rather than pushing the GDP, government must focus on capability development of people. What they mean to say to capability development, rather than empowering the industrialists, giving the tax rebate or creating a lot of facilities, the same thing government can do. Government can go for more spending on education. Government can go for more spending on other social infrastructure. So people are going to be empowered, and when people are going to get empowered, they can go for what Modi ji is saying, that ki Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? What Atmanirbhar Bharat? What Amar saying, the Atmanirbharta means ki people can achieve automatically. You need not to push. Where you have to push, you need not to push by providing the schemes or kind of the scheme, that kind of the scheme, monetary support. You should focus on what? You should focus on their education, their health, and other related social infrastructure. If you are going to make it good, people are automatically able to find the way of earning more and handsomely, right? So this is the basic difference between what? Basic difference between that GDP approach and human development approach, right? So this human development is more focused on the other aspects, and it is more focused on being inclusive rather than being exclusive. Clear? Simon, who was introduced the concept of GDP? Simon who? So what actually human development is and where the focus area of the human development is, I hope right now clear. And why there is a talk of human development, right? It was a counter theory to the GDP based development theory. Any questions? GDP is a pseudo term. Actually, GDP at factor cost, GDP at PPP terms is best. Raj, can you tell me how can you reach to GDP at factor cost and GDP at PPP without using the GDP? Without GDP, can you explain this GDP factor cost and GDP at PPP, purchasing power parity? Can you reach there? You cannot reach there. So GDP is not a pseudo term. GDP is a basic root term. and on that route, the entire tree of GDP at factor cost, GDP at market price, GDP at PPP, all these terms come from the theory of GDP itself. So you are wrong when you are saying that ki GDP is a pseudo term. GDP is a basically base term, and on the basis of that GDP, you are going to calculate the income in the different contexts, in the different scenario, in the different way, right? So you are wrong when you are saying that it's a pseudo term. It's not a pseudo term, it's a real term. And currency value at PPP, actually that is a pseudo. That is a pseudo. GDP is not a pseudo. PPP itself is a pseudo. Purchasing power parity, right? And the per capita income. That is pseudo. That is creating a false thing, false narrative, right? And Westerners are not making us fool, right? Everyone is having a right to express their views, what they feel right. So if you are born in England or in the prosperous society, so for you not getting a proper drinking water, right? So people in India, when they drink the water from tap, right, tap water, so they have fear in the mind if water is going to be right or wrong, right? But people who are born in USA, for them that is not an issue, right? In India, when people will wake up in the morning, the first target is what? To save the water in the water tank. लाइट चली जाएगी, टंकी में पानी भर लो. This is the objective of 60-70% Indian in India. But that is not a challenge for the people who are living in the Western societies, because they already achieved such kind of the thing years back, right? So they are giving their perspective, we are giving our perspective. So it is the issue of the perspective, on what perspective we are looking the various problems in our society, right? So it's never like that. I think you are not in that session, I told this thing ki you should not be judgmental, right? This is right or this is wrong, right? You should always open for getting the viewpoint of others, and with the effective argument you can counter those statement. But still, when you are countering that statement, it's nothing like that ki he is absolutely right and you are absolutely wrong, or you are absolutely right and they are absolutely wrong. Things are always in the contextual manner, right? So there is a theory in the political science, the contextual theory and the textual theory. So we must have to see the context, in what context they are saying, what is the context, right? So for example, recently one law professor of US, she was making a lot of comments against the India. She is saying that ki the Indians who are here in US, they are raising certain issues of what? Racism and all. But go back to your country and see, right? The racism is inherent in the Indians, right? Indians are kind of racist. What she is saying that, look back to yourself. Rather than putting the question on us, you should first see yourself, how racist you are, right? Then going to ask us, right? But media has portrayed in such a manner ki what she is criticizing India unnecessarily. What she said, that was absolutely in her context. What we are going to say against her, that is in our context, right? So it's a matter of context. It's not nothing like that. It is right or wrong. What is going to be in 2040, we can just predict. We cannot determinedly, with determination we cannot say anything, right? So possibilities are there, certainties are not there. When we talk about the future, we talk about the possibilities, we cannot talk about the certainties. What is going to happen tomorrow, nobody know that, right? So there is no certainty in the future, especially in this what, in this world where the things are what, changing very rapidly, equations are changing very rapidly. In that kind of the world, You can go for prediction, that is fine, but you cannot go for the certainty. Okay. So I hope you got this idea about the human development, right? So all related discussions I have did, the discussions related to those topics, I have did the discussion. I will provide certain PDF tomorrow and certain PDF day after tomorrow. I will provide those PDFs related to all these social issues in India, right? I will give the PDF, fine. And you already have those schemes in your course. You can go through those schemes, fine, and you just go through the PDF which I am going to share to study and understand the theoretical part. Understanding I have given you already. Some basic data, means basic theoretical part is required, I will provide, and that with the schemes you can refer for all those topics, fine. Raj, this is your perception about me as a pessimist. See, when you are exploring the possibilities, it always going to give you what? It always going to give you more enthusiasm, more determination to work very hard. But if you have already decided, or you are already have this thing ki yes, we are going to get it, right? We are going to get it. That is not going to allow to show your 100%, right? So we always have to see what? We always have to see things in the what? When we are looking towards the future, we always have to go for the possibilities, right? Holding a, this is the bottle, right? If I'll ask you, can you hold it? You can hold it easily, right? But if I'll ask you, can you hold it for what? Can you hold it for 10 hours? Then this bottle is going to give you a lot of pain. Fine. So it is not just about what? The question, can you hold this bottle? So question is not like that when we are talking in the future. In future, can I hold this bottle? Yes, I can hold this bottle. But can I hold this bottle for 10 hours? That is a different question, right? So when we are exploring the possibilities of the future, we have to be what? We have to be more factual in the nature. We have to be more what? Rather than what? Ki, this is certain. We have to explore the possibilities. Yeah, you might be correct, but our generation don't wait for. I don't know for the entire generation, but the generation who is continuously watching those lectures since last 3 4 months, I'm very sure about those generations. They patiently watch this lecture for more than 1.5 hour to 2 hour, right? So I'm very optimistic about this present generation. They are patient and they are going to do in very constructive manner and systematic manner by having this idea in their mind that there is a possibility of each and everything, and accordingly we have to choose our course of action. Okay, so all the things which is related to the social issues I already discussed with you, fine. So tomorrow I'm going back to those core topic of the economy, and tomorrow I will share some PDF, then day after tomorrow I will also share some PDF, fine. And when we are going to complete the entire syllabus, then we will come back again, revision plus descriptive. So the descriptive discussion is going to take all these topics again in the form of question and answer. So it's not like that ki I am abandoning this. I will come back on these topics again, but in the question and answer format. Because see, thank you, Deepti, and same to you. Happy Bihu Festival. Bihu is one of the great festival in SM, and one of my student few years back, she's from SM, and I got the glimpse of that festival, especially the food part, the sweets part. That is very nice. She bought those sweets for me from SM, and I still love those things. And wish you very happy Bihu festival, Diti. And yes, question Ayush. Ayush, see, this part is over, almost over, and the rest of the topic, I think today is 14th. So probably by 17th or 18th, the rest of the topic will be finished. Rest of the topic will be finished, and once it will be finished, we will take the revision plus descriptive. Revision plus descriptive. In revisions, I am going to cover the entire thing which I have discussed in all the last sessions. I am going to discuss in little bit more faster manner, so that you can cover all those revision plus descriptive. So for next 50 days or whatever Ashok sir has discussed, all these things I am going to do in the upcoming sessions. Okay, so I'm winding up the session for today. See you tomorrow. And before tomorrow's session, I will show you, I will send you the PDF. Okay, thank you.